Hello, and welcome to another revision tutorial by me, Mr. McMillan. This tutorial is designed for all students studying Edexcel GCSE Religious Studies. It is based on the Religion and Life units, that's units 1 to 7, Section 1, Belief in God. In part 2 we looked at some reasons why people do not believe in God. In this video I'm going to look at how a religious person might respond to these reasons given by atheists for not believing in God. Firstly, we must remind ourselves of what are the reasons given by atheists for not believing in God. According to Edexcel, the three main reasons are 1. Scientific explanations of the origins of the world, 2. The existence of evil and suffering, and 3. The issue of unanswered prayer. Let's now look at each of these in turn. Firstly, some atheists think that science makes belief in God unnecessary, as science can explain the origins of the world. So how might a religious person respond to this? Some atheists seem to present the idea that you cannot believe in science and God at the same time, but a large proportion of religious people would argue that there is no conflict between science and religion. Evidence of this is the many people who are scientists who also believe in God. For example, Francis Collins, head of the Human Genome Project, is a committed Christian who believes that scientific discoveries, rather than disproving the existence of God, are actually an opportunity to worship God. Furthermore, the Big Bang Theory was in part discovered by George Lemaitre, who was a Catholic priest. And Darwin's theory of evolution was validated by the work of Gregor Mendel, who was both a biologist and a monk. Neither of these men thought their discoveries conflicted with their faith in God. More specifically, some theists believe that the Big Bang Theory actually supports belief in God, because it shows the universe had a beginning, and so it needs a cause, which supports the argument from causation. Also, many people think that the argument from design is supported by evidence from physics that says the universe is fine-tuned for human life. The second reason why some people do not believe in God was the existence of evil and suffering. So how might a religious person respond to this argument against God's existence? Let's look again at the inconsistent triad, which says that the existence of evil is inconsistent with an all-loving, all-powerful God. Most religious people would say that there is only an inconsistency if we assume that God doesn't have a reason for allowing suffering to exist. However, most religious people would argue that there are lots of reasons why God might allow suffering to continue, so the inconsistent triad is not inconsistent. So what could be God's reasons for allowing suffering? Firstly, suffering sometimes helps people to develop moral character. Virtues like compassion and forgiveness wouldn't exist in a perfect world. Secondly, without suffering we couldn't appreciate the good things in life. Just as you can't have light without dark, you can't have good without evil. Thirdly, sometimes good things come out of suffering. In the Old Testament, Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers, but eventually he helped to save the lives of all the people of Egypt as well as his family. Fourthly, some people would say that suffering is most often the result of human beings misusing their free will. If we want to have free will, we have to be prepared to experience suffering. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, many religious people would say that the best response to suffering is to be a more loving, charitable person. In other words, suffering gives us opportunities to be more like the people God wants us to be. The third reason why some people do not believe in God is the issue of unanswered prayer. Some people doubt the existence of God because so many people appear to have their prayers unanswered. How might a religious person respond to this? Generally speaking, many religious people would acknowledge that God doesn't answer all prayers for a number of reasons. Firstly, there is the practical issue that since so many prayers conflict with one another, God can't answer them all. This is demonstrated well in the film Bruce Almighty, when Bruce says yes to all the prayers and it causes absolute chaos. Secondly, some prayers are selfish, and it may be that God doesn't want to answer prayers that only help one person. For example, in the New Testament, the Apostle James says, "When you ask, you do not receive, because you ask with wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures." Thirdly, many religious people see God as a father-type figure, and often parents don't always give children what they want, because they know what is actually best for them. So God acts like a father, giving his children what they need, but not everything they want. Fourthly, God has given all humans free will, and some answers to prayer might involve infringing on someone else's free will, so God might not answer that prayer. Finally, one possible response is to say that God does answer all prayers, but sometimes the answer is no. So to recap, Firstly, in response to an atheist who might say that science can provide an adequate explanation of the origins of the world, a religious person might respond by saying it is entirely possible to believe in God and to believe in science. Secondly, in response to an atheist who says that the existence of evil proves that God doesn't exist, a religious person could argue that God has his reasons for allowing suffering, even if we don't know what they are. Finally, when an atheist says that unanswered prayers show that God doesn't exist, a religious person might respond by saying that God has good reasons for not answering all prayers positively. Thanks for watching. I've been Mr. McMillan. That's the end of part 3. For parts 1 and 2, click the links. If you have found this useful, please give this video a thumbs up and follow me on Twitter. You can also download an audio version of this video from iTunes so that you can listen to it on your MP3 device.